Hello everyone, this is Quinn from the CSM Electronic Music Department, and today I'm going to show you how to get started making music with the Novation Circuit Tracks. So let's get into it. First thing that you want to do, you can see there's already some stuff going on here. I want to make a new project. So I'm going to go to this Projects button up here, brings me to this project page, and you want to pick something that is this dimly lit blue. That means it's an empty project. So we have a clean project to start out with. So now we have an empty project. We're going to go to Synth 1. This is the first synth track. There's two. And with the synth tracks, we can sequence a synth to this 16-step sequencer. So the way a 16-step sequencer works is when you hit play, you'll see the playhead goes through all 16 steps, and any notes that we put there will be played back. So before we sequence anything, let's actually pick a sound. So we're in Synth 1, we're going to go to Preset. So now Synth 1 Preset, and here we have a bunch of different sounds to choose from. And you can hear what they sound like just by pressing a button. And there's also multiple pages, so make sure you scroll through a bunch to find one you like. Let's try that. So now we picked our sound, we're going to go back to the note page. And now we have the 16-step sequencer on top, and down here is our keyboard. It looks a little weird, but we'll get into that. So let's sequence some notes. Let's do something like this. I can hold the note and then pick which step I want it to happen on. And then you can also sequence multiple notes at once. Like that. I just sequenced a chord to this step. So let's just fill in some of these other parts here. And now let's hit play and see how it sounds. Okay, sounds cool. And also, you want to pay attention to these knobs up here, because they can really change how each of the synths sound. They're labeled with some labels that kind of give you a hint as to what they do. But each synth is a little different, so just be sure to mess around with each preset. Okay, I like how that sounds. Okay, so now let's go to Synth 2 here, and this is a whole new channel with a different synth on it. So now let me go over how this keyboard works, because it looks a little different from what you might be used to. The way it works is it's actually already set to a scale. So if we play from bottom to top, you can hear that's a minor scale. It's actually a C minor scale. And we can change it if we go to the Scales button up here. So now we can see wherever this is, we'll change the root note. So right now this is a C. This is kind of a chromatic keyboard. It's a little hard to tell because it's offset, but you can set it to a different root note. We can also change what scale it's set to. So the first one is minor, can go major, and there's a bunch of other ones you can mess around with. Also important, the last scale here is just a chromatic keyboard. So if you want to just use a chromatic keyboard, you can just pick the last one. But with this, you only have one octave. So let's go back to our minor scale. All right, and so now let's sequence something with this synth track now. And before we just, on Synth 1, we put the notes to each step, but we can also record the notes in live. Something like that sounds good. So now I'm going to hit record and then play, and any notes that I play will be recorded to the sequence. You can hear this step is a little off, so I can just hold clear and then hit the step, and now it's gone. Let's get rid of this one too. I put those ones back in manually. That sounds good to me. So there, now we have 2 synth tracks going. Also, if you want a metronome while you record live, you can do Shift and then hit clear where it says click up here, and you'll get a metronome while you play. So the next channels we have are MIDI 1 and 2, and these channels are for sequencing external MIDI equipment. So as you can see, let me move this over. I have a synthesizer here, and it's connected with MIDI over here to the circuit tracks. And also, I have the audio from the synthesizer going back into the circuit tracks, which is nifty because then I can mix the volume of the synthesizer on the tracks itself. So let's go to MIDI channel 1, and I don't pick a preset for this one. Instead, it's whatever I have on my synthesizer here. So any changes I make on the synthesizer will go into here because it's just an external MIDI. So now I can sequence my synthesizer just like one of the synth tracks. Okay, sounds good. Okay, now let's go to the drum tracks. So the drum tracks are basically sample tracks. So now we have the preset page turns to samples. So we can pick a sample we like, go back to the note page here, and then we can just fill in what steps we want this sample to play on. Just like that. And also, let's go to another drum track here. You can also you can put multiple samples on one track. You can only play one at a time, but if you do something like live record, let's find a nice kick and snare. That sounds pretty good. If you live record, you can actually put multiple samples onto the same track. So let's try something like. Yeah. Also something to note, the knobs up here change, so you only have 4 knobs with the drum track. And they're not, as the labels say, this one I believe is pitch. This is length. And then we have distortion. And this I think is filter. So you can kind of mess with the sound there. Okay, so now we have a good set of tracks. And now we can go to the mixer view here. So from the mixer view, we can do some cool stuff, like we can change the volume of each track. So for example, if we want maybe the kick and snare a little too loud, we can turn down this knob because it is lined up right with the drum 2 track, which is where the kick and snare are. So the knob that is right above the track, that corresponds, that's the volume knob for that track. Another thing you can do is each of these lights here is a mute button. So if you press it, then it will mute the track. So now the kick and snare will be gone. And we can bring it back just by pressing it. So we sequenced a pattern, and you can sequence notes to each of the steps. Another thing you can sequence, though, is actually these knobs up here. So any So if you hit record and play, any changes that you make on the knobs will be recorded to the pattern. So if you look closely, this light will actually fade in and out as the knob would be turning. And one last thing that I'm going to show you is you can also add effects to each track. So there's the effects page here. And just like before, these knobs correspond with the track that's right below it. And all these pink pads are delay, types of delay. And as you turn the knob, it will add more of the effect to it. There's also reverb, which are these yellow knobs. And now that I've hit, or yellow pads, now that I've hit a yellow pad, you can see that the knobs have changed to yellow. And now if I turn the knob, it will add reverb to a track. So now that we have all of our tracks and effects done, it's a good idea to save the project. So you can hit save up here, and then hit it again, and it'll flash green, and then it will be saved to that project page. And you can check, it's a blue light now. If we go back, everything's still there. Okay, so that about does it for the intro on the circuit tracks. With this, you should be able to start making, some of your own patterns and just exploring some of the sounds that are on this device.